You have to be willing to look at the brutal truth about this business you've got. And if you've fallen in love with your baby and are denying the truth, right, then we're not a fit, because I'm going to tell you the truth. I have to. It's above the door.
Welcome to the Sales Unscripted podcast, where it's not what you're saying, but who you're being while you're saying it that matters. Sales and scaling your business is what drives the engine here. So drop in, buckle up, and hold on, because we're about to shake up the sales game with the man behind the mic, Jim Padilla.
All right, thanks, Strickland. Appreciate the handoff, my friend. This is Jim Padilla, man behind the mic with Sales Unscripted, where it's not about what you're saying, but who you're being while you're saying it. That matters the most. And that always lends itself to being the right person in front of the right people at the right time for the right reasons, right? And it's when that happens, it's synchronicity. And that's when you know when you're meeting somebody who's real and who's true and who has it on the mark. And a lot of times it may not even be the most talented person, it's the person who gets it the most person who's got the greatest amount of clarity. You know, I talk about it often. I'm not the biggest, tallest, fastest, strongest, smartest of anything, but I am very clear about what I do. I take massive action because I know what direction I'm going in. And if I happen to be in the wrong direction, I can always change my mind and go another one, but I don't judge myself for it, right? And this is all part of the whole Sales Unscripted concept. So how do you know what direction you should be going? How do you know what things you should be doing? And my our next guest that I'm bringing to you today is somebody who's made a little bit of a career of that, figuring out what's the right direction to go, both in business and in the business of sales. And he's recently gone through some transition in his own company as he's continuing to grow and evolve as a business leader and an entrepreneur. His name's Jason Kanigan, and he is the founder of Cold Star Technologies, professional service firm that helps tech companies who are struggling to scale fast. There's a whole lot of other stuff in his bio, and we'll kind of unpack some of this as we move through the conversation. But the reason I wanted to bring Jason on is because he's somebody that I've come across this last year, and we've started to build a relationship as we serve people who are really looking to master the sales game, not just the sales conversation, but how do you leverage and scale in sales? How do you have scale activities like launches and live events? And how do you get yourself mastering the art of being able to put in 100% and getting out 200% and beyond? And he's somebody who has demonstrated that in several different areas. So without any further ado, I'm going to bring him on here. We'll talk about all things sales and scaling, and advise you to get out your notebook or at least pause this. If you're out on the treadmill or driving home, make sure you go back to it and listen to it later. Jason, say hello.
Good call. Thank you, Jim. Appreciate the introduction and being here.
For sure. So why don't you, in your own words, tell a little bit of what's been going on with you in your journey in the last couple of years, and specifically, you know, what you're doing right now with Cold Star Technology.
Couple years. Well, I had a great co-founder named Jeremy Pope with a previous business where we did scaling third-party sales teams for other businesses for high-ticket offers. That meant $6,000 or higher sale price for the thing that we were selling.
Right.
And we took over the sales duties and gave them to our team members. And there was a whole lot of operations in behind that that you wouldn't believe, because you can't just hire salespeople and stick them in a corner like a cactus and feed them leads and hope that they'll be fine. It's not enough.
Even though that's what we wish.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't. Yeah,
maybe.
Maybe. I mean, I knew what we were getting into. However, we did find, of course, that it got more and more complicated as we got on. And in fact, you'll hear Jeremy talk about this on podcasts he's on and discussions that we have. The onboarding process, when we first started out, and it was just Jeremy and me, it was just like, oh yeah, we get some money and we start doing the thing for the person, right? And by the end of it, it was a 6-page document, like real intellectual property, because there's all these check marks that have to be ticked off, and you can't just let that go, right? So that kind of process is what I am doing with my agents at Cold Star Technologies. Send someone out. Most of the time, if there's a physical location, we'll send somebody there. If not, if it's a virtual business, we might do phone interviews and that, but it's always better to be there if we can. And we'll document those processes, which means writing things down and then determining, like, should we be doing this way still? Because there's a lot of that inertia in the world, right? Oh, Mary, who started this thing, figured out how to do it, and then it got kind of frozen that way. Well, Mary's been gone for 3 years, right? And now we just kind of automatically, like robots, keep doing it the way that she did it. Well,
It's like
is
that
now?
closet's been shut for 3 years and nobody opens it. How come? Because it's always been shut.
Mhm.
Like, well, what happens if we open it? I don't know. Let's go find out.
There might be a monster inside, or just mothballs.
Yeah, or the cure to what we need to do next, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, it's amazing how we start doing that. It's like whenever I hear that, because I hear it a lot. Yeah, I always picture, when you walk up to a door, and because
Mm.
the door's closed and somebody's standing outside of it, you assume they've already tried to open it. So then you stand there next to them, waiting for somebody on the inside to come and open it. And then while there's four of you standing there looking at each other, somebody else walks right up and opens the door and walks in.
Right.
Like,
That
wait a
would be
second.
me right there. I kind of just walked up and opened the door. I'd
Awesome.
probably say, "What are you all standing around here for?"
Right. Right. Yeah, I'm the one who tries it every time. So, it's interesting because as salespeople and sales leaders, most of the listeners here are people who are scaling business. They're sales leaders, and we tend to think about what's next and what do we have to do to get the sale and what do we have to do to set up success. But what we don't tend to think about is what do we have to do just to keep everybody in their lanes? What are the boundaries and the borders we got to set up? What are the structures that we need to put in place to make people feel warm and cozy? Because that's no fun and that's not exciting. But what does it cost us if we're not diving into that as a salesperson or as a sales leader?
Well, if you're asking me that question rather than rhetorically, I will say you will lose a lot of your best people. They will move on because they're not there to make sales. Very few people are 100% money motivated, right? They've got other things, being seen in a very positive light, being able to show off a little bit, showboat a little bit, right? Maybe it's the camaraderie that they have with the people that they're working with. Maybe it's just being involved in that industry or doing good work, right? So I believe as an employer, you have to keep differentiating yourself from all the other potential employers out there. And if the strategy of your organization and its human resources is not an up and out one, right? And you actually want, which you see a lot in professional services organizations like mine, by the way, if you actually want people to stick around long term and be happy in their spot, and you're happy with that, then you've got to work on those reasons for them to stay, or they will leave.
Awesome. Now, where do you see the differences in that with virtual companies versus brick and mortar?
My gut says there is no real difference. People are still people, right? And they're still working together and interacting regardless of the media that they're using to communicate with, right? Whether you're walking into a room or doing a virtual thing like this, you're still interacting with a human being. And if I don't like you, there's going to be a problem, regardless of whether I'm in the same room as you or like this, right? In a virtual room, I'll back off, or there'll be all kinds of weird behavior, right? So you need to really be clear on the culture that you want to create. And that stems, beginning of it stems from having clear core values, a few core values, right? And not just a bland mission statement because everyone has a mission statement, but stuff that you believe in. Like, for example, I'll just share one from my company. Cold Star Technologies has the highest value of the truth. And when I have it's a virtual company right now. When I have a brick and mortar spot for it, I'm going to get those made in letters. I ran a metal fab shop, so I know how to do this. And the truth will be above the door in very large silver letters, metal letters, for everyone to walk under and be reminded about every day. That is what we're about here. It's not about being nice or coddling people or anything like that. It's about getting to what's really going on. What's the reality of the situation? Because once you acknowledge the truth, then you can change it.
For sure. Resonate with that heavily, both on the value side and with the truth. And it's interesting because the truth isn't necessarily one of our core values, but all of our values weave together in a way that the truth is present in all of it. It's a
Hmm.
thread that moves through each one of them because and we don't talk about it. Most people create core values and stick them in a drawer, right?
Right.
Or they're in the company handbook.
Right.
And
No,
so-
I will gladly not take on a prospective client because their values don't match up.
exactly. And
And
we
my
focus on
marketing
them
actually
frequently.
projects a lot of this to turn people away. It freaks people out on purpose.
Definitely. So let's talk about that in the context of the sales conversation or the
Sure.
sales process. How, what do you, something I see, and I definitely want to see your take on it, is there's a direct correlation to how much truth is there in your marketing and in your conversation and the impact and the results that you can get as a company.
Hmm.
And what do you see about that? How do you infuse that into your company?
I want to start fast because project start gaps have been killers of profitability in many businesses that I've been a part of and seen
Yes.
as clients and that, and just doing diagnoses and that, not even working with them that much, but just seeing it. It's all over the place, and
So
people lie
okay,
about
hold that note. If you
it.
could explain the start gap for people. What is that?
Yeah. Okay,
What does that mean
so
to you?
good question, Jim. You take the money. So say you're hiring me, right? To help you with, let's say in the last business, right? We'll set up
Right.
a sales team and you start generating leads for us and whatnot. Uh, so we take your money and we hire a salesperson and we get all the system stuff that starts to be in place, and that costs money. Our tech guy costs money. The apps cost money, right? And so the clock is ticking, right? And that fund that we started it with is having money pulled out of it. Now, you may go, well, actually, what I've been familiar with is different kind of selling. I haven't done online selling before, and I need to create a online funnel for this. Now, this should have been screened for beforehand, but it's happened, right? Where we get a client, and so there you are. You have to do the testing on the advertising. Well, that falls down and fails until you figure that out, right? Until you can run a lead from a landing page to an opt-in. Okay, did we get the opt-in right? That's going to take even more time. All right, now I'm going to send them to a webinar after a warm-up series. Okay, I'm getting some conversion going to the webinar. Now they're watching it. Nobody's buying, right? Until I keep messing with that funnel, and finally customers start popping out the other end, or people who book appointments to talk to our sales team, right? That could take months. And in cases it has. And that is the kiss of death for projects, that kind of start gap, where simply put, you as the seller are waiting around for the buyer to give you information that you desperately need to start with. If that gap goes on and on and on, and nobody does anything about it, it will just kill the project. Not only the profitability, which is important, but also typically the relationship too.
And
So my whole business is set up to avoid that problem.
we have seen that as a company here,
Mhm.
and no matter how many times we promise up front. I've learned to completely under promise
Mhm.
massively. I actually had a conversation with a very well known company just a couple of days ago, and they're like, "Look, we need results in 30 days." And I said, "I can't promise that." I said, "I can't promise that. There's things the first part of this is it's a 12-month engagement, and first 30 days, we're just going to be digging in and exploring. We're just going to be ripping off band-aids and looking at stuff. We got to find out why you got a problem in the first place.
Right.
Then we start looking at how do we diagnose." And, and he's really wanting somebody to come in and say, "This is what we can do for you in 30 days and I can turn this around." I say, "Look, I will do everything in my power to. That's our intent, but I can't promise that." And so it's, even when you're clear about the truth, people come in and 2 weeks later, they still want a result. Like, remember that
Right.
conversation 2 weeks ago?
That's
I
just,
told you.
yeah, that is unrealistic for complex products and services. It is unrealistic. And I hope that people take that away. If you've got it super clearly defined that, look, the only thing that I do, and there's a great coach named Alze Calhoun who focuses on this kind of business, and I love him, and I direct people to his video content all the time because it's fantastic. That's all he does, is train people how to solve this problem, A to B, and that's it. And yeah, I can do that fast because that's all I do. But if you're doing a complex thing like what we're doing, what I'm doing at Cold Star, where we're investigating and documenting, and then yeah, that employee can tell me this is what they do as far as process steps go, but then I have to confirm it too, and I have to confirm it without them knowing that's what I'm doing, or else they'll skew the system. It's like physics, right?
That's
By
part of
observing the
finding the truth.
experiment, it's gonna change the experiment. So all that is going to take some time in a complex system.
Yes. So, how do we solve that? What if, what are the two things that you do to alleviate that or solve that problem, to narrow that start gap?
Okay. So you'll recall that I said my marketing tends to turn people off.
Right.
Now, I've been a copywriter for over 20 years. When I started studying copy with David Ogilvy and John Caples and Hopkins and that, Dan Kennedy was working by himself, self-publishing little books and bigger workbooks and that, right? He hadn't even met up with Bill Glazer yet and formed Glazer Kennedy, which is the big, sort of agency that they've got, and the Admiral Circle and all that. That's how long ago that was. I've been studying and doing copywriting since. So, and I've been working as a copywriter. I don't do too much of it anymore, but once in a while a project comes up. And I'm well paid for it, because that is the most brutal work that I can do. It's like giving birth as far as I'm concerned. I got to really crank myself up and lock myself in a room and blare music, and then something comes out. So what I have learned how to write is what's called repulsive copy. And
Awesome.
the whole point of it is to send people away unless they love it. Love it. Not just like it, but love it. Okay? And so the Cold Star marketing is about surprise. I had written the inside copy on the Cold Star site, which is very plain Jane operations improvement kind of stuff, right? And I went, this looks, sounds, smells, tastes like every other professional services firm in the operations improvement area out there. I can't live with this. This is not going to get me what I want. And so I created an outside, right, matching up with the values, that is scary. It's all about intimidation and building authority, so that when somebody comes to talk to me, they're already in that frame of mind. Okay, I got to listen to what Jason says and what his people do. And I demand 100% compliance from my clients. And this scares a lot of people. It scares my ex-co-founder. He does not like this kind of attitude. He actually said, why don't you get the caps with the skull death heads on it for your people to wear at one point? And that's fine. That's a different point of view. But I am not putting up with that project start gap ever again. And so I demand total compliance with our process. And that means that you, as the buyer, in order to get the best result for you, you understand, right? The fastest, the best result for you. This is for your own good, smack. So kind of thing. You need to bring me certain things at the start of the project, or we won't go. We won't start.
And again, we're on the same page. I'm big on being contradictory, right? I love being, but not just not different for the sake of different for the sake of owning your uniqueness. And if everybody is being very, very much in their uniqueness, then we're all different. The problem is we all spend so much time copycatting people that we're trying to do what they do. And the whole Sales Unscripted brand is about doing what you do. That's the whole point, right? You can't follow somebody else's path. You got to follow yours. And that is in the messaging as well. So taking that contrarian approach, it's not about just being different to make noise. It's about being different because you have to capture their attention. When you say it different, if you hear the same stuff over and over, those neural pathways are worn out. You've heard them a billion times, so nobody's listening to you. And I always remember when I was on a podcast, when I was on your podcast, and you guys were joking, you and Jeremy, and you said, I'm from Bangladesh. And I was like, literally, I stopped in my tracks because that threw me. It was such a different statement. There was no place to register it in my brain. And I had to go, what the hell? He's not from Bangladesh. What is that? What are you talking
Canadian.
About? Where does this even fit?
That's right, originally.
Right. But the whole, I've never forgotten that. And I relate to that a lot or I refer to that a lot because that's the concept of being a contrarian and speaking truth, speaking exactly what you know is right instead of what the marketplace thinks is right. And then now you're capturing people. They're like, wait a second, I haven't heard anybody say that before. Tell me more. Or I haven't heard anybody say that, and that scares me to death, and I want to run away. What? I don't care which, but as long as you do something.
Yeah, the homepage of coldstartech.com has a 2-minute short story that I wrote from the perspective of an employee who is going to get found out as cheating, lying, stealing from the Cold Star agent being present and doing their process documentation, right? And I had somebody narrate it, and it's a great differentiator, right? Because a lot of people come to that page expecting the boring, dull process engineering stuff, and they get this. And it's like a creepypasta story for 2 minutes, right? And it sends some of them screaming to the hills, and that's fine. But those who, like you, go, whoa, what the heck is this? This is totally different. And then click inside to get the more strawberry flavored stuff, right? They're already now in the headspace of, well, this is different. I need to pay attention. What am I looking at here? Right? And they know it's about process engineering and that the headline says so, but there's something different about it.
So, listeners, you understand here. We're talking. He's an engineer. He's got an engineer background, a tech. He's an organizational thought process person. But I hope you're seeing all the connections and the dots here to how this shows up in your sales process and your sales conversation. Right? You need to make sure that you are owning your reality and making sure that your reality lines up with the user experience intended for the people who you serve. When those two are not in alignment, then you're always going to have a problem. And the way I see it, I would much rather be wrong doing what I know I should do instead of be wrong doing what somebody else told me to do. Right? So get really clear about the things that you know people need to hear from you and that you need to demonstrate. And I love the way that, Jason, you were sharing that story. You told the story from their perspective, right? That's marketing 101. That's what you should be doing. Everything should be about, I see myself in your story, in your marketing. And you and I spoke last week, and you were talking about taking a challenger perspective now to a process. How does that fit in here? And how's that fit in with?
Yeah, I have you to blame for that. Okay, so for those who don't know, okay, I went to school for operations management. I have a diploma of technology in operations management. I stayed on. They were like, hey, you have a bunch of courses from before. You combine that with your operations management diploma. Take another year, and we'll give you a business degree. Oh yeah, and we'll give you this administrative study certificate, which I got with honors for strategic development, work with the global economy. It was some fun economic stuff. And so I came out and I wanted to be a factory manager. Darn it. I really, really wanted, because like that's my training, right? And first job I got was sales. And I didn't like it. And I had a good boss, but he wasn't as talented as he thought he was, unfortunately. And so I did that for a while. And I quit a job when I was 24. Spent 2 or 3 months getting a factory manager job. And this was after a sales manager had told me I couldn't be a factory manager at 24, 25 because I had to pay my dues. And I can give that guy the middle finger for the rest of my life. He doesn't know what he's talking about. I went out, I did my marketing, I got my plant manager job. Suddenly I'm running a 24/7 operation here, 3 shifts, bunch of people, right? And a year later, I was managing 150 people with 6 supervisors reporting to me.
Right.
And I discovered I hated it. It was awful. It was like a bunch of little tattletales running to me all the time to tattle on each other. And I'm like, I don't want to do this, right? So I got into credit management for 4 years. I did some company turnaround stuff. Then I moved to the United States, and I got some consultative sales training towards the end of my time in Canada. And that came out of the question of, is there any other type of selling than the Tom Hopkins How to Master the Art of Selling, features and benefits, what I figured was pushy style of selling, right? And I didn't like the memorization. I wanted a process to follow. And so I got that, and I worked with it, and I liked it. And when I got into the US and was allowed to work, the first job I got was senior consultant with a consultative sales training firm. So now I'm doing the training, right? I'm training people. It was fun. I started a business where I was training people on how to cold call, and doing consultative sales training, training people on DISC and Myers-Briggs and things like that, right? And I did that for a number of years. In between then and now, this book came out called The Challenger Sale, which was a big investigation, right, that these guys did on a style of selling, and they had all this proof, right, all these case studies in the book about how this style of selling, which is much more grab them by the collar, right, and share an idea with them and get them to adopt the idea,
Right.
than consultative sales had been for me. And so I resisted that. Like in 2015, I was like, nope, that's not me, right? I'm consultative. That's my comfort zone. These are the skills that I know. I know how to draw people out and whatnot. And yet over the last several years, and then in particular this last year with you popping up here and there, challenging me a lot, because we would disagree a lot, right, on Facebook. And I always regarded this as like two professionals kind of, well, I got a different point of view on that, right? Or maybe I'm, and I would think maybe I'm not quite seeing this the way that Jim does, right? So I spent a lot of time thinking about it. And then the opportunity to really make the shift to this challenger approach, where you're trying to literally create and duplicate this idea in somebody else's mind, get them to reproduce it, right? So that they get excited about it. Now, really came out when I was doing some training for other salespeople. And I was laying out how I view selling. And if it's okay, I'm going to go on a bit and share this quick image. Is that okay?
Go ahead.
Okay. This is something different. You will not hear this from anybody else in sales training. Okay. I come up with it myself, and I haven't seen it anywhere else. That may mean it's a bad idea. I don't know. My ex-co-founder didn't like it because it was militant and kind of fighting and whatnot. But it was about, I was studying firepower and the development of weaponry. So rifles, right, from muskets, rifles, cannons, right, and you get to machine guns, and there's water-cooled machine guns, and then the regular machine guns of the modern era. And turned out I didn't really understand how a machine gun was supposed to be used. I thought you just pointed it at the enemy and opened fire. Like, why wouldn't you do that, right?
Right.
But it turns out the way that some armies have been using this thing for a long time, and I'm sure it's been widely adopted, is there's this fan out of the bullets from the muzzle, right? And it's the bullets spread out and they cover this ray area, and that's called the beaten zone. And you deny that area to the enemy because you're filling it with, well, a bullet could be there. Do you want to die? Right? And so some armies would create the beaten zone with their machine gun and then have their other squad members maneuver around the beaten zone. And that's how they get from A to B, right? And I was like, this is a lot like selling. If you take the beaten zone as something not created by you as the salesperson, but as something that is already in place in the prospect's mind.
Exactly.
They have already claimed out this area and said, this is what I believe to be true, which is why yesterday when you posted something and then it had to be removed from the group because they don't want outside links, but beginning with no, right? You were saying you weren't really for it, and I was like, well, there's this negotiation book from an FBI hostage negotiator that I've been reading that is really good, and actually beginning with no is good there. And that's where I come in with the point of view, is the no is the beaten zone, right? So finding out like what your prospect already believes to be true and then maneuvering around it,
right,
and maneuvering them around it based on what you know about them now is how I started viewing sales. And that really fits in well with that challenger mindset. So that's kind of a long way to get to where we are now.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I've definitely, for me, it's, like, to simplify that, it's really just about bringing a fresh perspective to an existing problem and shining light on it. Because when somebody owns their problem, then they tend to just want to fall in love with it. And even though it's bad for them, it's comfortable and it's familiar. And so then they start trying to find a way to make it not really a problem. And so to me, it's about shining a light on that to help them see the actual truth of the fact that, you are sitting in a diaper that's full of crap, and there's nothing but bad that's going to come from that. So I suggest you do something, although you're welcome to stay in that, but I'm not going to let you deny it and pretend you're not full of crap in your diaper. So at least if you choose to sit in it, you choose to sit in a poopy diaper as opposed to fooling yourself into thinking that it's a fresh one.
Or it's warm, and that's good,
Yes,
right? For
exactly. It's
now.
warm and it's wet and it's mine. And so, but interesting. Just a side note on that post. I absolutely agree with, and I'm big. If you're talking about never split the difference, that's a fantastic
Mhm.
book. And the difference, what I was posting in there was, I made a post. What he's referring to said, "What's the worst sales advice you've ever gotten?" And I haven't gotten tons, but I just played with one that popped into my head, which was, "Go out and get as many no's as you can, and then you'll find a yes." That's like, again, old school Tom Hopkins, Brian Tracy, but just go
Nothing against Tom Hopkins,
right.
by the way, was mellowed with age. I follow him on LinkedIn, and I see his posts, and I see he's got some more consultative style stuff in there these days.
Right. But that's old school approach. Like, it's a numbers game. And yes, it's a numbers game in the sense that you are going to talk to a number of people and a
Mhm.
percentage of them will say yes and no. If you treat sales as a numbers game, you're never going to maximize the process. It's not about numbers. It's
You
about
will not
strategy.
connect with individuals.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so, if I believe that if you go out in search of no's, guess what you're going to find?
Mm,
No's.
mm,
So the
mm.
concept of going out to find as many no's as you can so that you hopefully uncover a yes, that's foolish in my opinion, and you're sending people on a fool's errand.
Mm.
So that was the approach there. Um, so yeah, I love the story that Sharon, and I definitely, one of the biggest things, I guess the theme that I'm seeing in this conversation is the approach and the receptiveness of the approach, but not based on results, based on how it makes me feel. And
Mm.
I think a lot of people would have a challenge with what you're sharing in that militant
Mhm.
mindset approach, instead of just looking at it for what it is. And it's about behavior adjustment for people,
Mhm.
helping and for their own benefit, as opposed to, like when people say, I wouldn't want to use that because I don't want to make somebody feel bad. That's not really what's going on.
No.
I don't want to use that approach because it's going to make me feel bad,
Mhm.
which means you're still focused on you instead of them, and you've already defeated the process. So that's
Right.
a big challenge for me.
I wanna see what ground they have staked out, what they say they believe to be true. A lot of and this is the case when I'm training salespeople too. The first thing I go for are to find out those limiting beliefs. And I will ask them questions, and they will tell me things, and I will know the back of my mind that they're full of crap, that they're wrong. But I don't call them on it right away because that would just shut everything down, right? I just listen and go, okay, because I want to see where they're coming from. That's what's most important. And then I can help guide them to come to their own conclusion so that they can make the move themselves, right? And that's way more fun.
Yeah, and if you're listening, I believe it was last podcast or the one before last episode. I uploaded it was one of our team training calls, and I was working with one of the women on our team, and we were breaking through one of those. She had claimed some stake, put up some stakes in her territory, and said, "I'm going to claim this ground because I don't want to look at the fact that I was probably wrong there."
Mm.
Right, which was an interesting perspective. I just stayed with her in it the same way I would in a sales conversation with somebody. Say, look, I don't care if you buy this or not. I care if you move forward without actually seeing the truth of your circumstances.
Mm.
So if you want to claim this ground, that's fine. Just understand what's in the ground, and then it's up to you what you do with it. But I'm
Right.
not going to let you deny the truth.
Mm.
So why don't we tell some people here, but a little bit more on Cold Star Technologies? If somebody comes to meet with you, who's the person that we're looking for? I know you work with people that typically in the $500,000 range and above, and usually in a transition point, somebody who's looking possibly to exit, or somebody who's just recently purchased a company or going through some transition. So tell more about who that person is and why they want to reach out to Cold Star specifically.
Yeah. Chief thing, like we've been talking about, is the character of the individual. That founder or business owner. this is this is fun to say because it turns a lot of people off. You have to be willing to look at the brutal truth about this business you've got. And if you've fallen in love with your baby and are denying the truth, right, then we're not a fit because I'm going to tell you the truth. I have to. It's above the door, right? I must do it. So,
Exactly.
there's this thing in copywriting where you're supposed to say it's not your fault. And I hate that. I hate it, right? the circumstances you're in, it's not your fault. It's the government's fault, or it's the market's fault, or something like that. No, it is your fault. And it's like somebody was trying to tell me to write copy that way for myself, my LinkedIn profile. And I'm like, I'm not doing it. I don't care if I lose 90% of the people who come my way because of it. I'm not going to say it's not your fault. It is your fault. It's my fault, quote unquote, that I'm in the situation that I'm in at this moment, whatever that is. And it's your fault. You're in yours. You made those decisions. So that is the kind of person that really ought to be connecting with us. Somebody who shares those beliefs and wants to find out the truth about their business. And the truth about your business could be it's fantastic, right? And it's wired up perfectly. And there's this thing called the red team experience that we have where they'll do a series of discussions, and maybe their key people should be involved too, talking to me and some of my people. And the whole idea, it's a Tom Clancy thing, where the red team are that you put on your red hat and you're the bad guys, right? We try and kind of find out where the holes are in your business, right? What could be improved? And it's not just a SWOT analysis, right? That's probably the first thing they taught me in 1994. Consider the wealth of experience that we've got going on here, right? Not just with me, but the people who work with me, to find out where are we at. So if you're selling a business, it's a well-known fact, and you don't need to take it from me. Ask around. The people who value businesses will value it at a higher number if you have your SOPs, your operating procedures written down. Right. Number one, and that's something that we do. We don't even have to change anything. We can just document. We can flow chart, write down what happens, and confirm that that's correct, right? That alone will raise the price of your business. If you just bought a business, hey, what did you buy? You were sold a bill of goods. How is it really working now, right? What is really going on in it? And what are the major opportunities for improvement? Wouldn't that be good to know? So that's somebody who should talk to us. Somebody else I'd like to speak with is, again, going back to the founders or the owners who are willing to be honest about themselves, because I believe your business is an extension of you as the owner. If you're dysfunctional, which most of us are, that dysfunction is going to be projected somehow into your business, right? So you have to be willing to look at it and be honest and go, yeah, I'm screwed up in this place and the business is screwed up in this place, right? But if you've just got even a gut feeling that something is really wrong here, or maybe there's an employee who's ripping you off. There have been so many scams, Jim, that I have seen over the last 20 years in business, in factories. I just had a guest on my podcast, the Gold Star Project, who had a breadth of experience working with a major railway in the U.S. And he was telling me, he shared a story about a scam that happened at this major railway, where somebody was literally selling the scrap from accident sites that should have been obviously the property of the railway, right? And he was taking the money for this, and it over a few years gotten several $100,000 from it. And so this is going on under the nose of the accounting department of that major railway. Nobody's exempt.
This is why it's so important to ask yourself the question, is it working and why is it working? All the time, even if it feels like it's working. Don't just go, most people, we spend our time looking for the obvious fires and trying to put them out. And that's, obviously deal with that or your house will burn down. But you need to, I find that the stuff that makes the biggest movement is when we look at stuff that is working or that we think is working, and then we challenge why we think it's working, only to find out we could improve it tremendously. Or we find by diving into it, you find out, hey, this person's been cheating and the system and skirting reality for a bit, and it's costing us. And just by fixing that, you now plug up a hole in the bucket, and the bucket starts filling up again.
Right. Yeah. There's a tendency to just keep doing things the way we have been because they're working, sort of. But there's also this thing that's been around for a long time from Eli Goldratt called the theory of constraints. Another book that I read in college and bought again to reread again 20 years later, right? Whereas it's about bottlenecks. And so you can have a system that's running along very well. And this is not just in factories. This is in your online marketing funnel. There'll be a constraint somewhere. There'll be a bottleneck. And so if you can increase the size of that bottleneck, you can increase the flow through. What if you could double the number of people who go through your process in a week.
Exactly.
That's like double the appointments, maybe double the sales, maybe double the results, right? And what if it wasn't even that hard to do, but nobody looks. They just go, oh, I assume we've got that handled. I'm going to go look at this bonfire I see over here and try and solve that, which may not be actually as important.
So to wrap this up, here's what I want to, the spin I want to put on that. And think about this, guys. He's, everything you're hearing from Jason, very fundamental operational systems focused. Here's the beauty of this. Like, we have the guy who leads our tech team. We have an internal tech team here. And yes, he's a tech guy with a massive sales background. So he understands how to speak technology through sales language. So he understands why technology impacts what we need as a sales organization. Somebody like Jason, and what he does is, I believe that, Naveen Jain always talks about, you can't disrupt an industry from within it, because you just know there's too many things you're numb to. So as somebody, you can take an operational systematic approach to looking at your sales process and saying, this is why it's not working, not because I'm a sales expert, although he is, but because he understands why systems break and fail in the first place. And that is equally, if not more important than having somebody tell you why you're not making sales, right? Because he doesn't even have to be a sales expert to make that happen, but combined with the fact that he understands sales implicitly, I think it's worth the conversation. Reach out to him and talk to him, find out how he can help you. All the show notes will be there at Sales Unscripted for you, SalesUnscripted.com. Go in and check it out. Make sure that you rate and review and subscribe to the show while you're there. And before we part ways here, Jason, share one quick thought here. And what I'm doing, I'm asking experts and leaders, what is the one thing you're working on that we would never guess you're working on that would impact your business growth?
Impact my business growth. That's a great question. I wish you would ask me beforehand so I could have had some time to come up with an answer. I believe that personal branding and fame are definitely a part of this kind of thing. Like, if you're well known, right? It's like the cricket players who go and get elected Prime Minister of India or something like that, right? Or Pakistan, right? You can borrow authority from one area for another. So I'm a writer, and I have been writing a science fiction series, kind of like if you've watched that TV show about where they dig down into the earth on this island, Oak Island, Secret of Oak Island, to find buried treasure down there. It's a really cool story. Like, everyone from John Wayne to FDR has been there, trying to dig up this treasure for 200 or 300 years, right? So it's a science fiction series kind of like that, based around this planet and this ongoing, like, what the heck is it? And all these false starts and different factions trying to figure it out and that kind of thing. So if that were to take off as a kind of fictional fame thing, that might be impactful on drawing more people over to the business.
Yeah, always interesting. I get very different answers from everybody across the board on this thing. I'm always fascinated. It's definitely going to become a book at some point. So thanks so much, Jason. Super appreciate having you on and all the wisdom that you're sharing. If you're resonating with this, guys, please reach out. Go to SalesUnscripted.com, get to his website, find a way to talk to him, and just get some insight and see what he can share with you about your business and the limits and the blocks that are holding you back that aren't necessarily between the ears for a change, but that actually might be happening in your business. All right. So Strickland, show them the door and show them where they can, what they need to do next. And we'll see you on the next episode. Until then, go out, change some lives, and make a ton of money. We'll see you soon.
All right, Jim, I'll show them where to go from here, man. Look, if you love what you're hearing, here's a great way to get more. You can get a free month's access to our awesome drop-in coaching group. All you got to do is subscribe, rate, and review the show and share it. Then head over to SalesUnscripted.com/get more to get your free month of drop-in coaching with Jim as our thank you. We'll see you next time on Sales Unscripted.